Hello, my name is Josh, and this is Everything is Art. In this episode, I chat with Noah Wilson, a young, up-and-coming comic book writer and graphic artist. We talk about social media, motivation, revising old art, and more. Enjoy.
I'm Noah Wilson, and I've been drawing primarily comic books since I was about 7 years old. I've been writing comic books for the same amount of time. Basically, if you want to know how I started, you remember Captain Underpants?
Yes.
So there were the two kids in there who drew comic books for Captain Underpants. And when I was a kid, I was hyper obsessed with that series, like going to the library and grabbing them all the time. And my first run of like my own interpretation of like a comic book series was called Super Bionic Parts Man. And basically the pitch was that it was like a kid who can turn his body parts into what I called bionic parts. And this was, I don't know, do you happen to know the series Generator Rex?
No.
It was a cartoon series made by the same people who made Ben 10. It didn't take off as much, but
Yeah.
I was into that at the same time, and so it was just kind of like a rip-off of a couple of different things, you know?
Yeah.
But I wrote tons and tons of issues of that all throughout my childhood, and from then I just took off to like Harry Potter rip-off novels, and basically how I started was just a bunch of rip-offs. And once I got to about like middle school, I started doing superheroes, and then where I'm at now has just been like a continuation of everything that I've done since, a bunch of reboots of my own things I used to do when I was a kid and whatnot. I just have this dream that, like, if I can at some point make something where somebody will come home from a bad day at school or something, and then either read my comics or watch a cartoon that I might make in the future or something like that, and then have a better day because of it, then that to me is success.
Yep, same here. If I can, just having you laugh at my god-awful comics, that's it. That's all I need from making those. But I have a good question on that. Now that we were mentioning that, there are people that I know who get complete satisfaction just making stuff in secret. I envy those people. I don't know how they do it, because for me, it needs to be interactive. I need to find that people are enjoying it in order to get anything out of it, or else I feel like it's kind of pointless.
Yeah, that's how I feel about stories. Like, the stories I come up with I want to tell, it doesn't really satisfy me enough to have it just like laid out for myself. And even if I just come up with it and tell my friends about it and then they're stoked, that's been keeping me going up until this point. So the idea of having like tons of people react to it sounds insane to me. And if I can get there one day, that would be like prime, you know?
Yeah, when it's just the Pokemon drawings, nobody could say anything. It's just kind of a habit I'm doing. Like, it's not really, but when it's something I really worked hard on, I want, even just an LOL is enough for me.
Totally. I feel very mixed on the relationship between art and social media right now, because in a way, social media, if you use it right, it will give me that. Yet at the same time, I'm like I don't engage with social media with my art all that much. In a way, I almost feel like it would kind of taint my art a little bit, or at least that's how I felt, and I'm trying to find a middle ground where I can feel like I'm being true to what I want to make. It's hard right now being an artist in this social media age, because like we were talking about earlier, anything, any kind of like the worst drawings ever, or like not even bad drawings per se, but I see like somebody will just write like believe in crayon on the white paper, and if they market that, millions and millions of likes, millions of comments, you know, like there's no dig against the person who's writing believe on the crayon, but it's more about like what it is. Like if you take a step out of it, it's kind of how a lot of people feel about abstract art. Like, you know how some people will see like a red box on like white canvas and say, I could do that.
Yep.
And then the argument back is, well, you didn't. That's kind of how I feel with a lot of abstract art. But to write something in like crayon, I feel like a lot of people have done that. You know what I mean? So, or I've seen so many like 4-panel comics with stick figures.
The popularity is not on its own merits. It's dictated by, the algorithm, which is a bunch of white people who, work for Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and it's like, whatever they like is going to be whatever gets popular on there.
Mm-hmm. Or was it like Facebook moms,
Yeah.
A lot of them are like decent, but then you just have like knock jokes and stuff like that where it's just like millions of likes, but really, really minimal effort. And it all comes down to marketing. And so it's like a different skill set. It's like a business major could be better at being an artist right now than an artist, Yeah. And that's kind of funky to me. And because I kind of don't like that so much, I kind of would just rather do it another way. But again, I'm trying to find a middle ground that works.
Yeah. Whatever that other way is, I'd like to find that too. Because even the oatmeal, you've heard of the oatmeal? The worst drawings you've ever seen because they're just ugly and gross. He's an advertiser.
Yeah.
So that's how he made it big. It's not because of the art. He's not even that interested or passionate about the art at all.
Yeah. I will say one of my biggest inspirations was Robert Crumb. You know anything about that guy? Yeah. The way that he made it was, of course, this is back in the 60s, so completely different world, but he made Zap magazine, a little zine, right? Just full of his own stuff, and stood on the corner of Haight and Ashbury in San Francisco, just handed it out to people, and got recognized, People were into it because it matched with the scene of the time. And that's why I made my own zine, because I wanted to do the same thing. And I've gotten some stuff out of it. Like there was a free comic book day in my hometown back in California. And I went there and they had people signing little books. Nothing like Marvel or DC or anything, but just like a little independent printing press. And then I went up to them, handed them my own stuff, and they liked it so much that they offered me like a job out of it. And so it's like, I feel like if I can just meet the people and try to put myself there, it's weird because I do want to make my own thing and like my own brand, but the way to do that is social media. And then if you want to meet people, then you're going to kind of be grouped into what they want. So it's so hard right now,
Yeah. I think the future is probably similar to the zines where it's a collaborative kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that way somebody else creates something and you can be like, this is amazing, this is the best thing, rather than having to toot your own horn, which is hard. So having that kind of collaboration or mix, I think, is what's going to save a lot of artists, maybe.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
my own
funny.
head theory.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because that was my original intention with my zine. Because I had not a ton of friends, but I had enough that I felt like I can make something. And it didn't need to just be art. Like, I was thinking, I had some friends who wrote poetry and who wrote short stories, photography too. So I've laid out this 28-page run of like a couple of pages dedicated to photography and poetry and comics interspersed. Like one comic to take a full page and then like flip a couple of pages and it's the next like continuation of it. So it's pretty, engaging. But the thing about that was, if you're not paying somebody, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it's hard to get anybody to do anything. And it's like as much as you could want to do something, if you have to go to work or if you have to meet the deadline for school, it's like the priorities are gonna sway that way, Yeah. So my goal was to do it myself first, say like, hey, you see how cool it could be? Don't you wanna like try it out now? But, it's still hard. I have this sort of philosophy that dawned on me a little while ago because I was thinking about my like idea of making it, right? And I was thinking about all of my idols that I have. And a lot of their stories involve some great level of sacrifice, whether it's like quitting a job and moving out to the countryside to spend a year writing their thing, coming back and then having it, or like taking a huge risk. like one of my biggest idols is Ralph Bakshi. Do you know the guy?
Yeah.
So the way he started was after like, just studying a bunch of books that he would get at the library, he started working for, I believe it was Disney. I could be wrong about that. Maybe it was Warner Brothers or something like that.
Yeah.
But the way that you like go up the ladder in animation is starting off at cell shading, or at least back in the day when it was all traditional. You start off at cell shading and then like inking and then actually drawing it and then actually like helping come up with what to draw. And that process is like a 10-year process. It's like you have to take so long to rise up through the ranks. And basically when you're at the bottom level, it's like almost like borderline slavery, right?
Yeah.
Like even back in the Disney age when they would abuse women, like trying to just do cell shading and stuff like that. So he was in that, and then he realized like, dude, this sucks. Like I can do so much better. So what am I doing down here? So he moved his desk over to the side of the room where they're doing like more important work, and then just would do the work. Nobody noticed because there wasn't really a lot of regulations. And so he would do it for like, I think like a year or so, until somebody finally realized like, hey, you're not supposed to be here, man. Go back to your like bottom tier. And then everybody kind of was like, well, he's like doing some of the best work, So they just gave him the job, but the sacrifice was like taking that risk, just like he was the one to move the desk, Everybody else wanted to make it an animation and was like, okay, well, I'll just go through the process. But if you actually want to like be there, you have to do something weird,
Yeah.
And I'm realizing that there's going to be a point in my life where I've got to do something weird or like make some sort of sacrifice, like quit my job or like cut off everybody I know, or have something horrible happen to me that will lead me to, be inspired enough to work on it. Like if I get in an accident, my legs are chopped off and I'm in a hospital bed for a couple of years, and then I write some incredible story, maybe that's how I make it, It's like, it's got to be something intense, If you want to make it and like keep being the artist rather than being the business major or the marketing major or whatever, I feel like that's going to be the way. It's I'm not sure the specifics, but yeah, it's weird because I'm now thinking about like how many years is it going to be until I drop everything in my life and move to the countryside to really finish my work,
Yeah. Definitely, I feel like a lot has changed from, Ralph Bakshi's era to
Totally.
now. And I feel like if he had tried that now, it would not have worked.
I know.
So I'm trying to sort of build up the creative part while still working. I don't know how easy that is for most people. Probably not.
It's not.
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing. 2 jobs and like just trying to fit it in when I can. And that's not even factoring in like having to make food for yourself and having to clean the house and stuff like that. Or if you want to have a social life, like you want to work in the morning, clean the house in the middle section and then go out. And then that leaves you with like 30 minutes before bed to work on your little doodle for a second before you just pass out. But like,
I think it's important to identify the stuff you can and you can't do with the time that you have.
oh dude.
So there's that, and also making what you're doing a habit. So then it's just a thing you do.
Yeah.
But most importantly, finding something to do with, like, so example, when I did those 150 Pokemon things, I was constantly thinking of, okay, what happens at the end? I can put them all together on a poster and sell that. So there was a way of creating something from the smaller pieces.
The most important thing is what you're not doing. You can do whatever you want, but what you're not gonna do is so hard to figure out sometimes. So for example, like let's say that you're making a fantasy story or something like that. Or even like an image, right? Like a fantasy drawing with like a knight fighting a cosmic beast or something, Cthulhu-esque, something like that.
Yeah.
Just an image like that. And you decide you wanted to paint it or something. There is so much that you can add to a scene like that. Like you're like, okay, well wait, maybe it would be cool if I make like swirling clouds. Oh, maybe it'd be cool if they're all different colors or something like that. and maybe the beast is part of the cloud, so it's like an impossible task. And then all of that kind of stuff works, but then you go down to something like, oh, maybe I can dabble and ink it first before I paint it, or maybe I should do cross-hatching. Oh, but then shade it with the color too, and then maybe he could be super beefy, but like have this super complex armor. And then once you add more and more and more, I think because like creativity is innate, but also with creative people, it's such a flowing process that it becomes it's kind of intimidating, and also it doesn't really yield the best results. I find that with comics a lot, because it's like when you're writing a story and you decide to throw in some characters, and then you figure, hey, it'd be cool if there was sort of a love triangle going on. And then it's like, well, I actually really like that. Maybe I should lean more into that. And then, you know, by that point, the story is about the love triangle now rather than like whatever else was going on. So it's like restraint is so important when you have a creative process. You gotta work within your time, and if you wanna put something out, you have to give yourself a deadline. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because when you keep on working on something like a script, usually you'll kind of end up with something better than what you had before. It's also just hard, because then it's like, if you wanna make a deadline, like make a project within a year's time, and then you spend 2 years, like a year just sitting on it and changing things, and then a year working on it, it's like, it doubles the time. Sometimes you just feel hopeless, like, dang, I'm never gonna get this out if I'm just gonna keep working on it. There should be a point where you feel like this complete project I'm happy with, you know? And, but you kinda just gotta step out of it and see like, hey, if I were to find this on the shelf myself, would I like it, you know? Even though I could keep on changing it to make it focus on different things, you know, you could go down that path. But yeah, like, there's a point where you have to be satisfied with what you're working on.
So this would be a thing where I try and troubleshoot and be like, okay, at least for you, I think you might have some sort of way of releasing things, like once a month you have the next chapter, something like that could work. I've seen people on Instagram who will do like the first third free on like Webtoons or something like that, and then they'll do a Kickstarter for a giant graphic novel. Yeah. I think that is a good thing, because it's then like, you can't really change the stuff you've already written. It's set in stone, which is both good and bad, because you may hate it, but it also means you've finished it.
And when you do that, it's like you can see what people like. If you're not like done with the last half, you can see what people like and kind of make adjustments based on that. So I agree, that's like the best way to go about it. My plan was, I had like a 6-issue run, and my plan is to release the first 2. Because I'm doing like the first issue be action and the second issue be explaining what's going on, and then from there see if people want to like kickstart it or something like that. But again, I'm expecting this to be like a 3-year process of writing this story, you know? It's like I'm really giving myself a lengthy amount of time, because I know that I'm gonna have so much other stuff going on too. So yeah. Also, it's the hard part, or another hard part about it is not getting bored with what you're working on. And that's why things keep changing all the time. It's like, I have a lot of friends who make music, right? And I've even tried myself just before, you know, GarageBand and stuff like that. Yeah. But if you if you hear the same song on loop, at like the 50th playthrough, it's gonna sound like horrible. And then you're gonna wanna keep on changing it and do the same thing there. Meanwhile, when my friends show me their song, they're like, oh, I hate this, but yeah, check it out, why not? I'm like, dude, that sounds fantastic. But they don't think that, because they hear it 50 times in a row, and you know, they're breaking it apart. So it's like, you kind of gotta like hope that that's how other people feel about your stuff too, or like people like it and you're just breaking it apart. There's a lot of weird little like doubts that have to go on in your head when you're making something like that.
I have this thing where it's like, oh, this is a huge mythology. You know, I can't go back and change something because that'll ruin things, something I created years ago. But then, like, that's BS. That doesn't exist. There's no reason you can't release something bad and then come back later and fix it up.
Yeah, it's crazy, because especially with what like and I'm going to talk about music a little bit here too, because it kind of goes hand in hand. But with social media and then streaming right now, some like Spotify and Apple Music and whatnot, there's so much opportunity to change your stuff now, like that there wasn't before. Beforehand, especially with music, you can just like release the album, and you could kind of go back and release another album that's like a remix or something like that, but you can't. It's like you're tied by these record companies, and they're not really going to want to do that. But if you just have people make a song, figure they want to change it, and then delete it off of Spotify and put out another one, then it's like it never happened. One of my favorite artists, Tame Impala, the guy's name is Kevin Parker. He has a song that came out in his newest album. It released as a single first, but he put out a different version on the album, and then just took off deleted the original version. And this guy's big, like he's headlining festivals and stuff like that. So it's not just like some small indie project or whatever. But yeah, he said in an interview once that he foresees a future with music being like there is no set determined release, and everything is, you can kind of go back and change whatever you want. And when I first heard that and read it, I was a little put off by it, because I don't know, maybe it's just because of how like I'm used to things, but like I thought like, no, I kind of like the idea of having set things, especially with the world of remakes that we're living in movies, you know. It's like I've basically never liked the remakes more than the original, and it feels gross because it feels like you're going back and tainting something. Or sequels that are like released years and years after the first one, like the new Watchmen show. Completely took a left turn off of the comic, and it's like, dang, do I really have to sit here and accept the fact that this is what happened next, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I refuse. It didn't happen.
Yeah, but if you really think about it, you could just say that, right? Like, I could just, with the next Disney live action remake, you can just not watch it and be like, nah, I don't, what Lion King 2 or here, you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like the best way to combat that kind of thing would just to not engage in it. I'm so much for expression, and me personally, I change things all the time, that I can only imagine that if you're a big artist, music or visual, like, and you see something and you just want to go back and change it, the fact that you're popular shouldn't be the only thing holding you back from doing that, you know? And like, yeah, people, it's hard nowadays because everything is eternal. You know, it's like everybody will screenshot something, you know, and then you go back and try to change it, and it's like, no, what about this, see? Even me personally, I want to make my stuff to engage with other people, like we were saying before. Like, I want the back and forth, and I want to kind of do art for people. The creative process is still going to be individualistic, you know, and so there's still going to be like, it's still in the hands of the creator to change whatever they want, or like retcon something, or, you know, it's like, it's all up to them. So to worry about it is kind of a waste of time, in my opinion.
When Stephen King was writing The Dark Tower, he made his first one, The Gunslinger, and it had nothing to do with like the later ones. There were a lot of, you know, continuity problems. So he just completely rewrote it, and then the other one just disappeared. And so, I mean, that is pretty popular, and he kind of erased the first one.
Yeah, and then even like Star Wars, right? Like all of the expanded lore before Disney took over it is retconned. So does that mean like it doesn't exist? Like, does that just mean that all of those books and comics and like, you know, like video games even, they just never happened? Yeah. Or do they live on in our minds, you know?
I hate the idea of, you know, this guy, you know, does this incredible art, and then people 200 years from now love it, but it's like, he died a pauper. There's this woman, her first name is Lucille. She was a blues singer called the Dirty Blues. she had 2 versions of this song. It's called Shave 'Em Dry. It's extremely X-rated, the one she did, but then they did a censored one. And so on the X-rated one, she's just like improving and like talking about the studio and like, but that's the one that's on YouTube that everyone listens to now. So that makes no sense. Like you can't predict what people will like. I guess you can only know what you personally will like.
Yeah, so it's like, why bother? Why bother?
It'll figure itself out in the future.
Yeah, that's another thing with art, man. It's like you have to, if you don't adopt that mentality of like kind of going with the flow or just why bother, you kind of have to be a little loose. Nowadays, at least. I think back in the day when there was all these fine artists and stuff like that, it's like they were very meticulous about it. And maybe with like sculpture or like fine art, like painting and stuff like that, it's good to be really meticulous about it. But I just don't think that people nowadays resonate with that unless you're in the scene, you know? Like, I think the wide audience is more into the loose stuff. Like I was saying earlier, restraint, not really taking it too seriously is another thing that is essential in being an artist today.
I mean, with the stuff, the Pokemon drawings, it was, I wouldn't say it was bad on purpose, but it was drawing them from memory. So I didn't even know what the hell colors they were or anything like that. And it was just, when I set it up ahead of time, like, this isn't really gonna be very good, it's gonna be funny because it's bad, it was easier to just do that rather than spend forever and be like, this has to look exact. I just had to like face it, and you also have to be vulnerable to a new idea and kind of opening yourself up to, like, they are going to criticize you on purpose because you were like, this is bad, you know, they're going to do it.
I think that that's basically the biggest thing that turns people away from art right now too. So there's this sort of idea that art is sort of this pretentious thing, or like this meticulous, like you have to have it in your mind, execute it perfectly in order to do art, you know? And I think that because a lot of people are trying art at later ages where they don't have a lot of experience, it's hard to pull that off on the first try. It's basically impossible. But it shouldn't be about that. It should be about having fun and just kind of, if you have something inside your head that you just feel like drawing it, you just draw it. You know, it's like, it doesn't have to match or try to match it in your head based on what you can do. You know, it's like if you have this idea that you want to draw like a person, like a face or something like that, and you want to do like some dude with a handlebar mustache, but you just like can't really get it right. If you like adopt a style that is like kind of goofy, kind of cartoonish, really like kind of just novel, but you still have the handlebar mustache and you just kind of like still achieve what you wanted to do, just in a different way, that should be the direction that people who don't really like know how to do art like at the moment kind of take, you know? It's like, instead of just like giving up about not really being perfect on the first try, it's like you gotta just work around what you can do and what you want to do.
And I feel like too, that's all internal. Like it's an internal shame kind of thing where like, damn, it's not good enough as I imagine it. It's like, I don't think it ever will be. Like if you just start drawing again and you're expecting, you know, Leonardo da Vinci levels, it's never ever going to happen. It would take 5, 10 years, 20 years. And then even those people don't like, you know, what they do and will just paint over it like Da Vinci did.
Totally.
He painted over the Mona Lisa, I think, multiple times.
Yeah, and there's always going to be a level of improv to art, no matter what kind of art you do. It's like, you can always like try a different color and be like, oh, this is perfect. And then you make it, you know. I just think like some levels of art, that's a lot more prominent. Like me personally, when I draw, it's very sketchy, and I make up a lot of characteristics on the spot just because, like, let's say you're, like I've said, you're drawing a face. As the pieces of the face start coming out, it's like you start to learn kind of the person and kind of be like, oh, the person with this eye would have this nose, you know? And I think that's where a lot of the fun is to me. It's kind of like dance, you know? It's like, it can be very free form if you want it to be. And unless you're trying to do like ballet or something like that, the point of dance isn't to look fantastic, it's to let loose, you know? I think that I was watching a YouTube video that was making arguments for dancing like an idiot.
Okay.
And saying that like in today's day and age where everyone's wearing suits and you're like working in this capitalist society 9 to 5 and everything is so like make money to buy food, to only feed myself, to go to sleep, to wake up the next day and all that kind of trash.
Yeah.
It's like if there's no way to like let loose and stay attuned to your humanity and you're like, I don't know, like doing something that you just wouldn't usually do just to be like, oh wait, yeah, I have a body, I'm not just a cog, you know, then you gotta dance like an idiot, you know? And I feel like if you take art and put it on the same level as dance, you gotta draw like an idiot, you know? Draw something stupid. Draw like a dude with like an apple with a face, with a sock in his fish drawer or fish bowl, you know what I mean? Unless you're really trying to make something, you could just make whatever and nothing is lost except like 30 minutes.
Bill Hader said that what he does when he's writing, Bill Hader, you know, yeah, he'll write out all of the bad ideas first. And he doesn't judge himself. He's just like, okay, let's get all the garbage out first, because only when you know the bad can you then focus on the good. And I feel like that is a super important philosophy.
Yeah, that's actually incredible, because that kind of goes along with what I was saying about the knowing what you don't want to do, you know? It's like, especially when you can see it, that's actually a great idea. I'm working on a couple of different things, but like I said, I haven't taken off yet. You know, I'm just in my beginning phases, but I do have a website, KareemComics.com, and on that website, I'm trying to start like a consistent blog. It's not consistent yet, but I'm trying to get there. And in the coming years, I'll be working on this sci-fi epic called Cosmic Blues. Basically, it's dealing with dimensions and reality warping and demons and punks and love triangles. And I'm hoping that it's going to be pretty killer, but it's not going to be out for a little while. But yeah, over time, I'm going to be releasing more and more as I make more and more. But in the meantime, I've got shirt designs. As I'm going through the process, you might see cool stuff, if given a little patience, you know. But yeah.